Welcome back. In this segment, we're talking about a generational housing boom. I'm Cleve Gaddis. You're listening to Go Gaddis Real Estate Radio, where we help you go from novice to confident pro so life's biggest real estate moves feel clear, not scary. If you have questions or topic ideas, go to gogaddisradio.com. That's GOGADDIS radio.com. You can send us a note. You can nominate your neighborhood for the Neighborhood Spotlight, and you can subscribe to our podcast. So let's jump right into it. This is all about the generational housing boom that is taking place. To me, I frame what's happening as the biggest transfer of real estate wealth in history. Let me say that one more time. I frame this, what's going to happen for the next, let's call it 20 years, is the biggest transfer of real estate wealth in history. Now, millennials and Gen Z, I'm a Gen X, are now the dominant buying force, but baby boomers hold significantly the most real estate wealth. Now, that makes sense because some boomers have been homeowners for 60 years, some 50 years, so they've had time to accumulate wealth, and I think there's some really interesting things going on. So let's just hit a few demographics for a second. There are currently 70 million plus baby boomers. They're aging. Many want to downsize. Many want to cash out. Many need the money to pay for, some type of independent living or assisted living or whatever it is that they need. And in many cases, they want to sell what they're doing and then be able to move in with a family or in an auxiliary dwelling unit with maybe their kids or grandkids or somebody like that. Millennials, there are 72 million are in the peak home buying years. 70 million baby boomers, 72 million millennials, and Gen Z is actually, believe it or not, and this is not the trend we were seeing for the last couple of years, is starting to buy even earlier than expected. Let's jump into the numbers just to clarify what we're talking about here. Now, if you're driving your car, I don't want you to drive off the road. If you're listening at home, make sure you're seated so you don't fall over. But in the next 20 years, it is estimated that 84 trillion with a T, is expected to transfer from boomers to younger generations in terms of real estate. So let me just say that one more time. By 2045, $84 trillion in real estate wealth is expected to transfer from boomers to the younger generations. Now, my guess is, and I don't know this for sure, but my guess is that housing is by far the number one. 84 trillion is the total amount of assets. And housing is by far the number one asset class that's being transferred. Sorry, the 84 trillion includes other things that heirs might inherit. Housing is the number one asset being transferred, and I think that's a very interesting thing. So when you think about it, right now there is still market pressure. Housing supply is limited. If you're listening and you're a home seller here in Metro Atlanta or in many major metro markets, you might not, it doesn't feel like housing supply is limited because it's a little harder to sell a house. But there's still multiple generations that are in many cases competing for that. Builders are struggling to keep up, and there's still millions, as we mentioned in the last segment, leading up to the recession. We were building 1.2 million, 1.4 million, 1.6 million new housing units, adding 1.4 million to 1.2 million to 1.6 million housing units every year. During the recession and after the recession, it got down to where it was between 400,000 and 500,000 units per year. And you say, well, that doesn't really matter because that's all we needed. But household formation doesn't typically slow down. So you were having 1 million or 1.2 million or 1.4 million new households being created. You say, well, how's that? Well, somebody graduates from college and goes and gets their own place, or people get married and they get their own place, or whatever it is. I mean, the things, people get pregnant and have to have a new place. So all of the things that cause people to need an additional or a new housing unit, those things continue on at the same pace, but the pace of building does not keep up. Now, you also have lifestyle shifts. So you have remote work that is allowing younger buyers to spread into the suburbs and small cities. I was having a meal with my mother over the last few days, and she mentioned that some of the people who work for the big law firms, and in Atlanta, most of the big law firms are midtown or downtown. They're, somewhere in the city's core. And she mentioned that for the first time in forever, that a lot of the people who work for those law firms were actually changing firms and moving out to the suburbs. And it's so interesting because for years and years, the commute was getting so long that people would decide, hey, I need to move closer to town. But in general, when people start having kids, schools become very important, lifestyles become very important, traffic or lack thereof becomes very important, and people in many cases want to escape to the suburbs. And this is all very, very important stuff. So let's just walk back through this just a minute. So in many cases, when someone inherits real estate, and we're talking about the $84 trillion that's expected to transfer from boomers to younger generations, when you inherit something, you inherit it at a stepped-up basis. So, for example, if your parents had a home that they paid $100,000 for, and maybe it was 40 years ago, and today that house is worth $800,000. Well, you would think about it. If it worked sort of the way everything does, then the parents would pass away, the kids would inherit the property. It would keep that same basis of $100,000, which means if the heirs sold it for $800,000, there would be a $700,000 capital gain. But that's not, that is, let me clarify again, not NOT the way it works. The way it works is the heirs, when they inherit the property, they inherit it at a stepped up basis. And so the value of the property is the value the day it is inherited. So parents paid $100,000, 40 years later it's worth $800,000. When it gets inherited by the heirs, it goes over at a value of $800,000. So only on additional gains and value above the $800,000 would the heirs be responsible for paying taxes. Now, there could be some exceptions to this because in the state of Georgia and throughout the United States, and I don't even know exactly what the minimums are, as your estates get bigger and bigger, they could be subject to some inheritance tax. And I'm not prepared to talk about that on today's radio show. But a lot of this wealth that's going to be transferred from boomers to millennials and Gen Z is going to be transferred tax-free, meaning here's $700,000. My millennial kid or my Gen Z grandkid, here's $700,000, and you don't have to pay tax on it. Now, I want you to let that sink in for just a minute. And I know some of you are listening going, hey, there's no chance of me inheriting anything. I don't think he's talking to me. And I wish everybody could inherit $700,000. It'd be amazing. But this is going to be a big, big deal because $84 trillion is expected to be transferred from boomers to younger generations by 2045. If you've just joined us, you're listening to Go Gaddis Real Estate Radio right here on AM 920 The Answer. I'm Cleve Gaddis, and really the purpose for this show is to get you from a real estate novice to a confident pro so life's biggest real estate moves feel clear and certain, not scary. If you have questions or topic ideas, go to gogaddisradio.com. You can send us a note. You can nominate your neighborhood for our neighborhood spotlight, and you can subscribe to our podcast. Let's jump back into the numbers again. Again, limited housing supply. So let's talk about people living together in multiple generations. So those of you who listen to the show regularly, you know I'm engaged to be married. Her name is Tammy Slay. She's a real estate broker. She lives in North Dallas, Texas, in Frisco specifically. And she and I will get married in April. We'll probably have a house in Atlanta and a house in Dallas for a couple of years. But ultimately, we will probably settle in somewhere in North Dallas, maybe a little bit north of the city. And one of our plans is for her mother to be able to not necessarily live in the home with us, but as we talked about on a show 2 weeks ago where we talked about Grandparents' Day, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we want her to be able to have an accessory dwelling unit. So Tammy says we want her to live in the pool house, and we don't really mean the pool house. We mean a house behind the pool. I think if you live in Dallas, it's so hot, it's kind of a requirement to have a pool. So there's a lot of that combining families together, and who knows, my mother might need to move to that area. I've got a brother who might need to live with me sometime over the years, and so I'm not going to be surprised if we have 2 or 3 generations living together in the same home. And it sounds like that's something that's brand new, but the reality is that's the way it used to be. And then it got to where all the parents were on their own or in assisted living or living separately, and the kids were on their own. And so people didn't come together and live together like they used to. And I think that's a really, really important distinction here. If you are thinking about selling your home anytime in the next year or year and a half, we want to make sure you get the upside. And if you were wondering what is the upside, there are 4 or 5 different options for selling a home. You can sell your house, guaranteed cash offer, close in 21 days. We can help you with that. List your home as is, sell it as is, where is, make no repairs, and close it. We can help you with that. Make some improvements to the home to really make sure it's fetching top dollar. We can help you with that. And last but not least, maybe you need some funds to buy your new home, and then you'll sell your existing home and pay off the borrowed funds or the advanced funds for your new home. We can help with all of that. And the point here is that what is the upside or what is the best thing for your family is not the same thing that's best for every family. Some people just need to go. They need to go now. They got to relocate. They got to be in a certain place by a certain time. Some people don't have any money to spend to fix the house up. Some people want to spend a little money to fix it up, to make the most money. Everybody's situation is different, and we want you to be prepared and know what the upside is for you. It's simple. Go to gogaddisradio.com. Click on the upside, put in a little information. We'll reach out to you, and I will work through those numbers. No cost, no obligation. I absolutely love doing this for people. Couple things. Remote work is allowing younger buyers to spread to the suburbs, as we talked about, and multi-generational living is on the rise. It's 1 in 5 households. So if this is going to be the biggest generational housing boom in history, what does that mean for you? Whether you're buying, selling, or just staying put, the impact is real, and I'm going to break that down for you after the break. Stick with us. We'll be back.